I didn't prepare a real presentation, but my story is always kind of the same. I always start with how did the problem of international jihad grow so phenomenal in Belgium? Basically, it all started when I made myself a Twitter account back in August 2012, if I'm not mistaken. I started following, apart from the usual stuff on business analysis and enterprise architecture related to my work, I started following jihadis. And not just one of them, but dozens. They were all over the place. And it was quite easy for me to actually track them down and to start publishing about them. Basically what I did, together with the assistance of newspaper journalist Guy van Vlierden, a Belgian colleague of mine, shall I call him, we basically built up a database of Belgian jihadis. And it soon, well, basically got out of hand. Our numbers were at least twice the size of the numbers published by the Belgian government. And it was a bit worrying, actually. The fact that we could identify more jihadis just using social media and open source intelligence sources than there were actually reported by the Belgian government at that time, that was quite alarming indeed. In Belgium, we did have three major waves of jihadi groups leaving. The first major wave being Sharia for Belgium. Sharia for Belgium, shortly after the group disbanded itself in October 2012, the first Belgian members of Sharia for Belgium left for the war in Syria. At that time, they all left for one little group at that point, Majlis Shurat al-Mujahideen, led by Abu Atir al-Absi. Basically what happened, one of the Belgian jihadis, Hussein al-Wasaki, a simple guy from Vilvoorde, he basically became the emir of the foreign fighters in Majlis Shurat al-Mujahideen. When the group later broke up and Abu Atir gave his bay'ah to Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, Hussein al-Wasaki and a small number of Belgian and Dutch fighters refused to go over to the Islamic State and joined the ranks of Jabhat al-Nusra. What we see at that time is, and that's exactly the point where I started tracking these guys, is that via social media there was an enormous recruitment wave going on. The first guys were clearly inspired by ideological motivations, like, for example, Sharia for Belgium leader Fouad Belkacem, but directly inspired by his great example, Anjem Chowdhury, on which Professor Duplessis has just talked. We see that a lot of people who left in the second, what we could call the second wave of leavers, those were the guys, the people who were inspired and motivated, peer pressured in a way, to go over there, to join their friends, to join their relatives. Some of them, they sold their houses, sold their cars, and left with the whole family. We have not only the three waves, the third wave obviously being the wave that left when the Islamic State was refurnished, shall we say, as the Caliphate. When the Caliphate was proclaimed, the majority of the guys who left at that point, all of them wanted to join the Islamic State. At this point, out of the almost 600 Belgians who had been at one point in Syria or Iraq, more than 72% of them are associated with the Islamic State. We have two other major groups, actually. We had Sharia for Belgium, then we had a smaller network operating in Brussels at the Gare du Nord, North Station. That was the network around Jean-Louis Denis, nicknamed Le Soumis. This guy, he basically he had a small organization called Resto du Tawhid. He was doing dawah and he was helping poor Muslims around the North Station to get food and aid and whatever, but also a one-way ticket to Syria. The most important network, however, is the network behind the Brussels-based Khalid Serkani. Basically, if we look at the network around Khalid Serkani, and especially one of his main recruits, Abdelhamid Abaoud, we could say that Abdelhamid Abaoud and his guys were the ones responsible behind the Paris and Brussels attacks. And I have strong reasons to believe, actually, that at this point, the part of the network is still intact. We do know that a lot of the people involved around the Paris and Brussels attacks have been arrested or have been identified. Some of them being killed, some of them still in Syria or Iraq or whatever. But I do believe that there is a significant group still at large in Europe that probably used the refugee route to come in. Look at my time. Basically, I'm about there. The current situation with the Islamic State disintegrating, and the fact that basically we do have quite a significant number of foreign European fighters, some of them even with Western backgrounds, they will have to come back to Europe at one point. And it's especially when this group of jihad warriors, and some of them are face the fiercest things, they will come back and they will at some point reintegrate or try to reintegrate in our societies. And especially in neighborhoods in Belgium, like for example Vilvoorde, Brussels, the Canal Zone. That's my mark. Sorry. It doesn't want to stop. So basically, that's what we're going to face. We're going to face more of that, more threats, more lone wolf attacks. Well, and one more thing about the lone wolf attacks. I don't believe there's such a thing as a lone wolf attack. Those things are inspired attacks. They are networked, inspired, and directed attacks, as Clint Watts basically pointed out. And I do believe that's one important theory to remember. So basically, two things. One, we might face more of them. Two, we will see more inspired and networked attacks. I don't think that the Islamic State at this point has the power to organize more fully directed attacks like we have seen in, for example, Paris. Thank you very much.